All right, guys, well, it looks like we're here. I'd like to thank Mayor Brandon Whipple for sharing his platform with us. I'd also like to thank the Wichita Eagle for coming in and sharing their platform with us as well. I'm very eager and happy to share my platform. I was going to do a couple podcasts, but this is the one that I think is the most to my heart right now, and I also feel like it's one of the biggest issues that we have going on in our community, as everybody knows about. So the structure that we're going to have right now is everybody's going to take their turn. They're going to share a few experiences. We're also here to help provide solutions. So everybody's going to share a few experiences of what they've had in their life and a solution of what we can do in order to help with the community and the issues that are going on. And we're also here to engage the mayor on where the city's at with everything. That way we can all get on the same page and do whatever we can to help, because that's our number one goal, is to kind of, just be here to help. And we're going to let Chris Barnett, he's going to take the floor first, share a couple of experiences that he's had and some possible solutions that he could provide on the issues that are going on right now.
All right, so this has been some years ago. I was leaving work and I had the family in the car. I got pulled over at about 25th and Hillside because one of my headlights were out. Mm-hmm. It wasn't broken, it was just the bulb was loose. So the cop pulls me over. And he's like, I pulled you over because your headlight is broken. Mm-hmm. So I explained to him the headlight's not broken, the bulb is just loose. Yeah. So he says, no, the headlight is broken and you can't ride around with a broken headlight because, you'll be a danger to the streets. So I explained to him a second time, headlight's not broken, the bulb is just loose, mm-hmm. and I can fix it. So now I have to step out the car, the whole family's in the car. He asked me to step out the car and he's like, well, if you're working, well, he asked me if I'm working. Yes, I'm working. Well, if you're working, why come you didn't pay to get the headlight fixed? For the third time, I explained to him the headlight is not broken. All I need to do is screw in the bulb and it'll be good to go. Mm-hmm. And what he says to me is, you can't spend money to get your headlight fixed, but I bet you can spend money to buy marijuana. So I tell him I don't know what that is relevant to, but I can screw in this bulb and it'll be, all good. Yeah. He tells me he's going to give me a ticket. He goes to the car, and while he's at the car, I open up the hood, reach in, screw in the bulb. It's good to go. So I explained to him, check it out. Bulb was just loose. I screwed it in. We're set. Yeah. He's like, no, I'm still giving you a ticket because you're riding around like this. You're a threat. Blah blah blah. Now,
after you fixed it.
After I fixed it, still got the ticket. So as black men, I'm not the only person that's had bad experiences with the police. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, this happens a lot more than we notice. But now that we're in the age of social media, it gets recorded.
Yeah.
But and really there's no definite solution to it. It's just police training. Something has to change with the training. And that starts from up top. Yeah. We're not going to be able to fix it just in the position we are in.
Yeah.
It comes from up top. Like I said, man, that's just one of the experiences that I've had with racism, or even with the police.
I think it also stems from you have to be careful who you give authority to.
Yes.
Like when you're a police officer, you're given now the sense, and the city is trusting you, the state is trusting you to be a leader in the community, and that means standing up for the people who are going to and from. That doesn't give you the right to just harsh down. For you, a police officer is supposed to serve and protect. Right. Where's the serving and protecting? Who are you protecting in that instance? Are you protecting other drivers? Because if that's the case, you fix the headlight. So your family is safe. Everyone else on the road is safe. But to make that comment, the comment's uncalled for. That's just you abusing your authority. And
it makes you feel like, I'm not trying to talk.
No, absolutely.
It just makes it seem like there's a lack of race sensitivity, culture sensitivity training within the police force.
Yeah, maybe more training on, racism in the police force would be your solution. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on that?
I don't think it's even training on racism in the police. Well, I guess, yeah, a little bit it is. But like I said, it has to come from up top. Yes, the training needs to be there. It needs to be more intense. It needs to be, more, racially sensitive. You know what I mean? I don't even like that term, racially sensitive, but it needs to be more of that. Whatever it is, there definitely needs to be more of that. Even I know we had talked about this, they say all cops aren't bad. There's some bad apples. Police force, there is no room for a bad apple in the police force.
Absolutely.
There's no room for that. You can't be, you can't be.
Maybe we need to pay the cops more money and not less money. Maybe we need to,
Maybe we just need to get rid of some cops that are quote unquote bad apples. You can't be a surgeon and be a bad apple.
Showcase.
You can't,
one strike,
you can't do, you can't do any of that.
I mean, you can't be an elected official and a bad apple.
You can't be elected.
Real quick, I think one of the biggest things that will definitely start to really create change from speaking from up top, from a government perspective is, I mean, when things like that happen, there has to be real consequence.
Yeah.
Whether black, white, Asian, Mexican, it doesn't matter. I think there has to be real consequence. Not just, you lose your job. Even at my job now, if I did something crazy, I would be feeling like there's going to be some consequence.
Yeah, there would be. You're going to lose something.
Okay, well, you're gone.
And unfortunately, it seems like the culture within the police force, and we've seen it too many times with Trayvon and Mike Brown, is that these cops do this stuff and they get away with it.
And there's no consequence.
There's no consequences.
Seems like there has been lately, a lot of the cops are getting murder charges now, right?
Yeah. Well,
ain't no convictions though.
Correct.
At this point, it kind of
just started.
And just to shine a light, on perspective wise, Troy, you said at your job there'd be consequences, for doing your job wrong. And it's like if you spit on your boss at your job, you get fired. And if you want to go for another job, you have to say why you got fired. And can we contact your next employer? If you're a Marine or if you're in the military and you spit on your boss in the military, it's a dishonorable discharge. They will kick you out. They can write something on your papers for life that says you are a dishonorable person. And having the job as a cop is just as important as you being a military, because you are at home military. You are policing the streets. They police the streets for foreign problems, and they're policing the streets here against people who are our own enemies in our own household. So the same way that a mark should be left for a cop, or the same way a mark is left for somebody who's in a serious position that's holding a rifle overseas and protecting us that way, if someone is doing something that's dishonorable here in America as a cop, as a leader in our community, there should be a much higher consequence.
Yes.
Much higher consequence.
Maybe more of a military mindset inside of the police force to treat it more like that.
Yeah.
So Andre, I guess you're...
I got a few of them, man. But the ones that stick out the most are just the ones that make me think. Make me lose a little sleep, I guess you could say. We were going from the high school to the rec center, traveling by bus to the gym, before gym. I can't remember if we were going over there to swim, play basketball, something. It's irrelevant. But me and some friends were sitting in the back of the bus, and we're all just cracking jokes, just having a good time. It's only a 10-minute ride, so you make the most of it with your friends.
Yeah.
So, we're cracking jokes. We start ribbing on each other, just as kids do. And out of the corner seat here, a kid stands up and looks at me and just tells me, "Why don't you just go back to Africa?" Yes. And at that moment, I was really taken back, man, because it's one of those situations where it goes from a good time to a terrible time. And you, as a kid, you really don't know how to handle that, how to process it.
And if I could ask, how old were you?
14.
Middle school? Okay.
Yeah, high school.
Oof.
So, a sophomore in high school, fresh in the game, just trying to figure everything out. And all of a sudden I got this kid telling me to go back to Africa. I think about that situation so many times, and I always think that I handled it the right way. Would I have changed anything? And I'm a real mild-natured person. I like to have fun. I like to goof around. So I guess I could say I wouldn't really change a thing. but it affected me. You know, it affects me to a point as a 30-year-old man. I think about something that happened. There's something so small, you know, 3 or 4 words, whatever. It happened so long ago, I still think about it. So one of the solutions that, you know, I think might be beneficial to us as kids growing up is within the school system. I think we need to do a little bit more for expressing how valuable other cultures are, other races are. You know, we have Black History Month where we touch on a few things for, 28 days, 15 days in school, whatever. But there's not enough of that. I think it needs to be in the homework. It needs to be forced to be more within the home. So that this way it starts with the parents. It can, the parents can trickle down to the kids, and that way we can truly make some sort of effort. Now, just kind of leading into, sorry if I'm rushing along here.
You're good.
The question that I have for you is, because I don't know much about you, I'm really interested to learn as much as I can about what you do for, what you're going to do for Wichita, what your plans are. What do you think about, or excuse me, let's start here. What programs or committees are you a part of that kind of help teach about racial injustice, that give communities, Black communities or colored communities, I guess you could say, more of a reason to have a voice, a protected voice?
So how,
like what are you a part of in Wichita that just enables, like Chris's situation, to speak up, give that officer's badge number without any sort of repercussion, and that he will be reprimanded if he does that?
So there's a few things my job as mayor, and I want to make sure I give enough time to everyone to speak as well. So I'll give you a shorter answer and we can expand on it towards the end. But my job is to represent all of Wichita. So I show up to every event that I'm invited to. And that means being a presence in the African-American community and making sure that it's purposeful too, because not all mayors have, but you can't just show up to take pictures. You can't just show up to listen and that's it. You got to be purposeful with your action as well. So one of the things, and when you were telling your story, my thought is process. Is we need a place where you can report that's neutral, that's not reporting it through an email to the officer who might have given you the ticket, right? We have an institutional review board, institutional review, that's not it. A citizens review board that is on the administrative side of our government, which means like the city manager, the police chief, they're in charge of, for citizenship, to provide that voice of citizens to that side of the government. On our side, which is the policy side, the elected side of our local form of government, it's kind of broken off into two. I just created I think it was last week, maybe the week before, they kind of blend together the weeks. For the first time, a task force or a council on diversity, inclusion, and civil rights, and appointed community leaders. It's the most diverse committee we've ever seen in Wichita. Today was our first meeting, and I had over 130 people so far who have applied and asked to be a part of it, which means I have to completely change my mindset about what we can do, because we're talking more than 20 people on a committee, right? How do I activate all these people who want to help? So I think to answer your question, one of the things we need to do is ensure that we have a pathway for folks to be able to communicate directly with their elected officials and directly with the mayor. Because I'm the mayor of all Wichita. I'm not broken off into one or two, one district or another. And then have those serious conversations about problems that could help lead us to solutions. And some of them are going to be technical in nature, like training, and some of them are going to be cultural, like with your experience. Wouldn't it be great if we utilize some of these community, council of elders, the NAACP, these organizations in different parts of our community who have a long history and a rich knowledge base to come and be able to do educational programs within our schools, within our city programs, where you got a bunch of kids and we're celebrating diversity of Wichita. And I think that, your story just as a 14-year-old, that's really a rough thing to go through as a young person when you're. So I think about what could have happened to the other 14-year-old to make it so that they would know better to ever say something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So,
And then like you're a father.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I worry
So
about
you
my
gotta-
son being caught,
exactly,
you know?
Man.
Yeah.
Kids, you know, I got your kids at school. That's terrifying.
Let's give Troy the mic real quick.
Yeah, my story happened about 4 years ago as well, and I was doing at the time in my life I was doing a network marketing company, you know, just building a business essentially, right? And what the process of it all is, you'd have information. It's kind of like a presentation, go through like a little slideshow. So show everyone what your business is that you're doing, and ask them if they want to join you or not, right? So we had a product and a service, etc., right? But so I had a friend that I had met briefly, and he loved what we were doing. He was like, you know what, my mom would love this. And he was like, you know what, do you have time to come in my house and we can show my mom? And I'm like, okay, great, yeah, cool. So we get there. She's kind of standoffish. She's very standoffish, and I introduced myself to her, and I like trying to shake her hand. She didn't want to shake my hand or anything like that. And I was like, all right, cool, it's your house, whatever. I'm doing the presentation. About halfway through it, she's like, can you just stop? And I'm like, okay, yeah, what's up? And she was pretty much just like, why are you here? And I was just like, you know, your son wanted me to show you this information. And she started to begin to just want me to get out. She was like, just get out, just get out. And I'm like, did I do something? And then she starts yelling at me. She's saying, just get out. And so I start to leave. I close the laptop. I get all my stuff, and I'm heading out. As I'm heading out, I hear her say to her son, why would you invite this N-word to my house? Whoa. And I'm like, what did I do? I didn't do anything wrong or anything. So I leave. I go to this coffee shop around the corner, and this police officer approaches me. And he's like, hey, are you Troy? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, hey, you just left so-and-so's house. I heard you were causing problems for them. And I'm like, no, not at all. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. And he's like, well, we don't like your kind. And I was like, what? I don't understand what I did wrong, sir. And he kept pushing me in my back. And every time I try and leave, he cut me off. And he said, you know what, we just hate your kind. I don't know why you got to be here. I was told you were peeking in her windows. You've been throwing rocks at her house. And I'm like, I've never done any of this. I've never been arrested in my life, anything. I don't understand what happened. He just kept pushing me and kept pushing me. And that situation, it took him probably like 30 to 40 minutes just to leave me alone. And, that situation has stuck with me forever. And ever since then, I'm sometimes a little leery around police officers.
Right.
Because I feel like I don't know what to expect from them. I don't know if you're gonna protect me or you're gonna hurt me. Like,
was this in Kansas?
Yes. Yeah, and
because you hear stories like that, you think it's far away. Like that
Say
can't.
it
again? I hear stories like that. I assume that must be far away. Like that's just. No,
yeah,
that's
that
awful.
was
How long ago was it? And you've never been arrested one time in your entire life, and you didn't even get a fair chance to tell your story.
Not at all. Not at all. It was about 4 years ago. Profiled. I'd see the guy sometime, and he would look at me crazy, and I'm just like, man.
The guy that invited you to his house?
No, the
Or
police officer. The police officer. The woman, I would see her sometimes. She would look at me crazy, but I thought it was just. I just didn't understand how. Number one, you didn't ask me, you didn't investigate anything, how it happened. She lied on me. She said I was doing this, I was doing that. Now I'm the one, getting bullied in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that stuck with you forever. So.
Yeah, and I think about it now. If I would have stood up for myself, even or got mad, I probably wouldn't. My daughter wouldn't have a father today.
Don't be telling this story right now.
Which is
scary, man.
Which is crazy to me. As a solution, honestly, I really don't. I don't know what truly can change that. If I'm being honest, me personally, I just do my best to just love everybody.
Right.
And I would say that's a solution, but that's so vague. And even to this day, it just baffles me to where I really don't know. Why would you do that? But maybe you guys should chime in. And
you can't even be like, just love everybody, because you was in her house being respectful. You was just giving a presentation and that still happens to you. So the whole love everybody and that theory is a void theory also. The whole be respectful, love everybody, that doesn't work with black people. Not all the time. No, you're still gonna get harassed like you did, and you're still gonna get called names like you did. That's nothing. There's nothing that you could do in that situation.
Yeah. I think what's important.
You want to go next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's hear your
So.
And I loved your solution, by the way, about the fire hydrant and what you said.
Absolutely.
When we were talking earlier. I love that.
So, actually, just to kind of like roll into that. So, as a kid, I went to a couple of different schools. We moved around town quite a bit, and I don't want to say which school I was in, but one day I actually got pulled to the police officers, because there's most police officers in most schools. They have an office, and so I got pulled to an office. And it was in the middle of the day. It was extremely random. Didn't expect it whatsoever. And I come in, and there's 4 officers in there. There's a teacher in there, and there's a principal.
You're a kid. How old are you?
I was a freshman.
Okay,
in high
so
school.
you're like
yeah, and I was new
14.
to this school. Yeah, and I was new to this school, and so I get in there, and they said that before we explain anything, we're going to go ahead and read you your Miranda rights. And so I was completely taken off guard. And I said, okay, absolutely. Said, you want to just tell us what you did, or are you going to make us dig it out of you? And in this position, I'm sitting with 4 cops in front of me, and I had the privilege of having, I had a relative at the school. That was the only friend that I had. And the only other person who I felt was ever really kind to me was one of the security officers, and she happened to be a black woman. And so while we're in there, they're talking to me. I said, I honestly do not know what you're talking about. So they gave me a minute to think about it as I was talking with her. And then they brought up what they said I was accused for. I was accused of sending and taking pornography pictures to 2 white young girls. And so really what had happened was the phone that I had at the time had broken, because I was new to this school, and the girl had picked it up and handed me my phone. And so in the classroom they had cameras, and one of the girls had said that she gave me back my phone and that I was trying to get her to see photos in my phone, that I handed my phone to her and I tried to show her parts of me. Well, the 2 girls were friends. After everything turned out, was said and done, the 2 girls were friends. I liked one of the friends, but I didn't like the other friend. This friend was jealous, and they had they confiscated our phones. They had a whole conversation about how she wanted me to date her, but I didn't want to date her. I wanted to date the other friend. Right. And so
14-year-old stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Some kiddish stuff. Some kiddish stuff. So all this happens, and one of the girls says, "Well, if you don't say that he touched you after school, I'm gonna tell our parents that you guys he was sending you photos and you were sending him photos in class." And then there's cameras in the classroom, and they accuse me of pulling my pants down in class and pulling out my junk in class. And there's cameras in the classroom. So we get to this point where they wanted me to admit this, and I had no idea what I was.
We wanted you to admit this.
The police officers wanted me to admit to this, and it was all a statement. And so I said, no, it didn't happen. I was suspended from the school for 3 days. And then once I came back to the school, the girls had actually admitted I was supposed to be expelled. The girls had admitted to not doing it and saying that, no, this was wrong, because they got into a cat fight, and the one girl who actually did like me just told the truth. They wanted me to admit to it, and I didn't even have my parents around me. Imagine being a freshman in high school and someone is saying that you committed something that you didn't.
Oh yeah.
That you didn't, and you don't have your.
Up.
I asked, can I talk to my parents? I asked, could I talk to my mom? Can I talk to my dad? And they said, no. You made an adult decision. You're going to get an adult's consequence.
Oh wow.
And so
that's not how.
Yeah, and I said, okay. And the principal came and talked to me and said, you just need to confess up. And so the injustice and the injustice that I experienced was how many other kids are confessing to crimes because they're put into a pressured situation of making them feel like, and growing up as a kid, I never had, I had one incident that was bad with my father that I felt that cops were bad. But growing up, we went to the Boys and Girls Club over on 21st and Hillside. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the old place that used to be there. And they used to have the police officers and the fire department would come out and they would spray water in the air over the summertime, and we'd have a blast.
Right.
Get to meet the cops, get to
More
meet
interaction.
Yeah, interact.
To kind of get them.
Yeah, check out the trucks, have fun, put the helmet
Hit the
on,
siren
wear
for a little bit.
yeah, like we would have a blast. So I never grew up with the understanding. So you could see how, as a freshman in high school, I get completely blindsided with, I thought you guys were good guys, and this is how you do. Right. This is what happens, and so after everything that happened with that, it changed my perspective on police officers and how that would happen. And I don't know how it would have happened if I was white. I don't know how that would have happened, but I know that my back was against the wall, and as a young black man who doesn't know his rights, who's uneducated on that, I'm very thankful that I didn't put myself into a worse spot by admitting something that I was innocent of. You know,
We're trying to talk your way out of it.
Yeah, and try to talk my way out of it. I said I didn't do this. Please call my mom. That's what I asked for. But you know, how many other kids are out there in that same position being accused? And I understand, you know, kids are gonna be kids. There's girls that get jealous. There's boys that get jealous, and there's lies that get thrown around. But when we get to that level, it's the cop's job to make sure that he does investigating before you just, because I would have went to jail if I would have admitted that. I would have been calling my mom from a jail cell.
Your solution that you're talking about, one thing to help, the more interaction with what you were telling me earlier, I loved hearing that.
Yeah, and so a solution, an interaction that I think would be beneficial was having events around town that I believe that kids and adults can interact with cops, and we can be seen as one. It's not the community against police officers. We should have that eye of, you know, the cops are here to help us. Police officers are here to protect us, and we should be seeing them as friends, as protectors, as leaders in our community. And so having events like pulling out the fire department and having them meet, and us having a chance to meet them. And I have nieces and nephews in this community. I love, you know.
Do they still do that, by the way, the fire?
I haven't seen it in a long time. And that's I haven't.
Interaction is what he was saying. I thought he had a really good answer.
That's a good memory.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I'll never forget it. And it'll be something that I tell them. The Boys and Girls Club, they changed buildings. It's at a bigger building. And so it's a much nicer facility. And I believe that, and I don't know if they do anything now, but I believe that having an event like that would change a kid's life, because it did. It played a big factor on mine. You know, it made me be like, hell yeah. Cops and firefighters are super cool. You know, it makes you inspired to want to be one, versus seeing every time. And the reason why I say even the fire department is because when you hear a siren go off, whether it's a fire department, whether it's a cop, they all have the same siren. So it gives you I get a bad memory anytime I hear any of them.
Wow.
And so, you know, and everybody looks at them like they're a collective group, because they are, but, you know, and so I believe that if we had some events around town, getting kids in, whether it's the west side of town, north side of town, east side, poverty, non-poverty, lower middle class, upper middle class, getting the word out to all classes that we should come together, with the police officers being there, with the fire department being there. That would help
us all be on the same team.
Yeah, help us all be on the same team.
Because right now it's kind of divided, where we feel like, when I was listening to him, he had one of the best solutions, where he feels like one thing that could help is if we had a lot more community events where, like, the cops go out, visit the schools. Like he said, the fire department would come out and spray them. And it seems like there's not a lot of interaction right now, and there could be a lot more events to get the cops more involved in the city, to where people aren't as afraid of them. You know, stuff like that. So more events. I think we talked in our last clip, James, about the, you know, maybe having more of a military mindset with the police officers, to where it's like one strike and you're out, to where if they do something, they pull you over and they racial profile one of you guys, then it needs to be like the military. It's one strike and you're out. You know, it doesn't. You shouldn't really get a second chance, because when you give somebody a second chance, you know, I feel like your odds are really a lot higher of something worse happening when you bring somebody in that was already proven to have a profile on their record. It should be just like the military. You explained that really good when you were talking about our last clip on the military about how they wouldn't put up with that. Go ahead and say that again.
So just as there's a standard, you know, with the military, there's a standard. And, you know, that same standard should be kept for the military. They serve and protect us from foreign and domestic. And so with the police officers, they serve and protect, and mainly theirs is domestic. And so with that being said, there's got to be a standard that's upheld. And if you were in the military and you were to spit on an officer, that's a dishonorable discharge. It's over for you. You could be in the front arena. I grew up in the military back home. My father did 12 years in the military. He was an X-ray tech, and so he ran our house very disciplined. And he let us know, you know, if you were to do something like that in the military, if you were to disrespect a subordinate, then the consequences are dire. And so in the community, if you go against a subordinate, if you do something, you have to be top tip shape. And with our police officers, they need to be in top tip shape the same way that the military is. Now, I'm not saying that they have to go through the same exact training, but the same standard needs to be high, because you train a military officer to hold an M16 or to go over and fight, and you train them to kill. And these police officers are getting trained to kill as well, to take care of their lives, to make sure that they're safe. You know, they have to be safe as well. And so with that being said, there does need to be more training, and there does need to be an expectation that we keep of making sure that whenever you mess up, it's not okay for you to mess up.
And the reporting system, like what you were saying, Brandon, what we're kind of looking for answers for all of these guys, because I've been talking to them like the last 3 weeks, like they feel like there's a biased reporting system. So maybe there's a better reporting system we could, you know, come up with, to where if somebody does do something like that, there's a better way to report it and to get investigated in a one strike you're out program, and to be held to a higher standard. Because during our conversations, we definitely feel like the police are not held to a standard like they are in the military. So maybe more of a military mindset, a better reporting system when somebody is doing racial injustice, to where they can report it, it can get investigated, one strike you're out, and better training and more. The answers that I got from talking to everybody was more interaction, to where we're all on the same team, go to the schools more, have more events, to where, you know, we're not so divided. So if there could be a better, this is the conclusion that I got talking to these guys the last 3 weeks, if there could be like a better reporting system, if somebody does something like what's happened to you, what's happened to everybody here that, you know, we said wouldn't happen to us, if there could be a better reporting system, because maybe like even investigation system just for that, and a one strike you're out program, better training on racial injustice, and more, those are the solutions we came up with, the group, and more interaction, I think, were our top 3 things that we thought of as a group in order to maybe help the issues that are going on with our community. Because like I told them, we can complain all day, because that's not going to fix it though. So the things that we can do to fix it is to make change. To make change should be a better reporting system, more interaction, one strike you're out, better training, stuff like that.
So there's and what I'm hearing too is, and I 100%.
They're getting away with it too much.
Right, and I 100% agree with, without consequences, you wind up in really bad situations. I believe
I can't really hear you, Brandon.
Is what?
I can't really hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll project. The officer who killed George Floyd, I think he had 18 or 19
There you go.
strikes against him.
That would have solved that right there.
I think
all of the officers involved.
Right, and there was another one, the one who kind of just standing there. I think he had double digits, and I can't quote the number because it was on the news, but it was one of those, where if you...
Those solutions that I just provided would have prevented that.
Right.
They'd be alive today if those solutions that I just put in place would have been there, that guy wouldn't have had a job. They have to be held to a higher standard. Somebody needs to make change because we don't really feel like it's happening right now. We don't feel like there's enough change going on right now to where they're going to implement a program to where they're going to hold police officers to a higher standard, to where it makes my friends, my coworkers, everybody to where they don't feel safe. And the only way that we're going to do it is change. And that was one of the main points of this podcast, was just to get the information out there, because that's all that we can do to help. No one's going to fix racism. When we die and we have a grave, just like at King of Freight, there's going to be a semi that drives by our grave. Racism is still going to exist. We're never going to fix it. The only thing we can do is to make measures, to take measures to help.
Right. So, you are.
Chris, I was going to ask a question really quick.
Go ahead.
Just kind of piggybacks off of what Mike was saying. I guess my personal question, I'm sure they got questions as well that's going to be coming up, but my personal question is, as just an average citizen, right? What are the actual steps that we could truly take that you would know, that the normal person wouldn't know? Being in your position, what are the steps that we could truly take to truly make a difference? Because I know you can raise awareness, you can do things, but at the same time, where are the decisions truly made? Where can we, as just a normal person, contact somebody that actually be
right? The podcast, well, that's
and it'll raise awareness, but
but action
if I'm
steps
LeBron
moving
James,
forward.
I can do something because I got enough power to do it. But the average person,
$50,000 guy or the $100,000
exactly. That's my question.
So, person do to help?
Okay, there's a few. So how to get more involved, particularly with policing and really with our communities. And I'm going to kind of dovetail a little bit off your story and your solution as well, where the first time, we don't want the first time people meet police officers to be when something is going wrong, right? Like, you want to build relationships. One of the things that we have going on in Wichita that we did in the place I grew up, but it's one of these, not every city does this, but it's really good, is our neighbor association meetings. And don't get me wrong, they're kind of long. Some of them, you could talk for a long time about someone who doesn't mow their lawn and a lot of complaints. The big deal with that, though, is your neighbor association, and every neighborhood should have one, unless you're kind of on the outskirts, then you get a homeowners association. An officer will be there who's in charge of that area. And being able to just show up, and it's usually on the agenda, it's one of the very first things that is presented as the community policing report. And you actually can ask questions and get to know the officer who's responsible for that area, because they have to show up, and they do, at every one of these neighbor association meetings. Relationship with, through the neighbor association with the officers who serve there, is that you have direct contact and relationship with someone who's part of that system. Also, our police chief, I will say, he's very approachable. And there are people in the activist community, when there were discussions about the No Ferguson here, because of the activist community, we now have body cams on all of our police officers, mandatory.
That's great, because that holds them accountable, so you'll be able to see everything that they did.
It holds the whole situation accountable. And
our question is, like, you see that instance on the body cam, and you just named off some stats on, if they would have been paying attention to those stats, there'd be people that wouldn't have died. How do we make the standards higher for the police officers, because we don't feel like they're high enough, and we feel like there needs to be change? So
that's what the body cam is for, right?
That's part of it.
But what happens when
a visual standard.
What happens when they, racially profile somebody one time or 5 times, or we don't feel like they're doing anything to them, and they're keeping their job? So what can we do to fix that?
Yeah, there's a complaint process, definitely. And we go through that
2 people
process.
would have been alive if.
I know, and we want to make sure that stuff never happens in Wichita. And it's really about cultural change, but also ensuring that to serve and protect, that policy as that bottom-up perspective. It's for the community coming up, where the community is in support and they're a part of community policing. So when it comes to having an area to file those complaints, that's very important, but also on the back end, making sure that our culture here is, we want good police officers who want to be good police officers here, right? Like we want, and to be honest, we don't want to be a feeder to other communities, right? Like we want, if you are a great police officer, above and beyond on the education level and the training, other communities come in and try to pluck you out. So when we have discussions about funding, like we have to pay people enough so that we keep the best and the brightest here, because those are the ones we want. And I'll tell you just a brief story. When I was a legislator, during budget cuts, they cut the state highway patrol so much that people, it was almost considered a feeder state where you get trained, you do your 5 years in Kansas to get your experience, and boom, you're now living in Texas, or you're living in Colorado. Like you were getting that experience just to, almost like an internship. And it was because we just weren't competitive. So there's a few things. I think training is really important, making sure that we build these outward relationships, but in a two-way, where like, who can I talk to about what's going on in our community? And like I said, I think the neighbor association is a really good place to start. And then also making sure that when we have classes that are graduating to police academy, and I already said, I think that we are one of 2 departments where we can train our own people. We train our own cops. So we can be quick on making sure that Wichita police are trained the best.
How hard do they train on racial discrimination? I'm
not sure what the actual training is with that.
Yeah, that's something that probably needs to be looked into, especially with how outraged the community is. Maybe they need to pass a bill to pay more money, to get better training, to get people that, maybe we don't have enough money for the police officers to where we have to keep these bad apples, because if you get rid of them, then we might not have enough. I don't know.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead, yes, sir.
About, and this is your personal, because I want to know.
Yes, sir.
So,
a lot of questions start like this. We're like, so just your opinion.
I mean, this is my opinion, but I want to know this, because I know with everything going on, it's easy to look at the news and say, you know what, I don't agree with these riots, and I don't agree with these people out here breaking stuff. That's easy to say. But you personally, do you understand what got them to that point?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would never fully understand, but I'll tell you, I think that it has a lot to do with being heard and making sure that we have people in a community have access to change. And that's why that weekend when we had, we were seeing what was happening in some of these communities that have a really bad history with policing. That's why on Tuesday, Saturday, we went from Saturday protests, Tuesday's council meeting, I immediately appointed or the creation of a citizens-led advisory to the mayor on diversity, inclusion, and civil rights. Because the reality is, like, we got to make sure there's a direct voice. People have a direct link to the elected, so they feel heard.
Right.
And I'll tell you, I think that was important because if you look at the events that followed afterwards, people knowing that they could come now, like, and me showing up to events and making sure, hey, I'm the mayor, I'm just here to listen, talk to me, and also other council members. That type of stuff is super important if we want people to know that their opinion is valued.
Yeah. Yes.
And to be honest, Wichita, we're one of the last major cities of our size that doesn't have people in the hospital for I think people are protesting and people are rioting in 2 different groups that way, but doesn't have for any of those situations. Even on a police officer side, on the public side. And I think a lot of that has to do with good leadership coming out and saying, talk to us. The work that our current police chief has done, showing up in the neighborhoods and taking questions and then being responsive, not just hearing stuff, right? Like he put in, after North Ferguson here, they put in body cameras on everyone. If you interact with the public, you have a body camera on. And then also the policy, which was citizen review board. So my job as mayor is what are we doing well, and how do I build on top of that? And then also to listen, be open and accepting of stories where we might not be doing stuff that well, right? Like where are the holes, and be able to admit that we need to improve on this, right? Like don't put my blinder up, being able to kind of have that like, so that honest, like, okay, we should fix that.
Right.
Go ahead.
So So a second ago, he was talking about how, or you both were having the interaction, and you alluded to having a police officer in an area that we could call like the neighborhood police officer. So I think it's important to know, because I think that that's great. So how do we find out who necessarily is ours? So if I live on the south side of town or the north
I don't
side
think
of town,
anybody even knows who to call.
where do I go to
like that
find out who might
I think it needs one
And
thing
this
that can
annoys
help
me
is,
because-
there in every neighborhood.
one thing would change.
No, you're right. Because I got to do a
more
better
public.
job getting some of this information out. And that's
Yeah.
one of my, and I'm kind of like the social media mayor, right? Like I run my own social media. If you tag me, I will try to provide you information. I try not to get frustrated. Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
But my job is to we got a lot of awesome stuff going on in our city. But there's only a few people kind of plugged into it, and they're the ones who follow it. So how do we get this information out? So not only do we have neighborhood associations, we actually have a bunch that are inactive. And every neighborhood, or most of them, has an association. It's on our website. You put in your address to find your neighbor association.
Wichita Eagle over there could help.
Yeah, well, the Eagle print something. I was kidding.
Y'all can help us over there. Get the word out on who they can call.
So yeah, on wichita.gov, if you kind of feed through that website, you'll find the neighborhood associations, and I'll tell you, there's a few things. One, so like neighborhood associations kind of like rise and fall, right? Where usually if you go in, you see my neighbor association that I was a part of before we moved just outside the district was filled with actually like former state representatives. Like it was retired folks. It was people who they just want to serve, but they're not, and they did stuff like neighborhood cleanups. They did really great stuff. And you didn't know about them unless you interact with one of them.
Yeah.
But some of them also aren't active, and there's going to be room for leadership. So if you are in a neighborhood where there isn't an active neighbor association, reach out to me, and I'll get you in touch with Janet. Janet is one of our outreach managers, and she will actually, she'll probably make you in charge of it, to be honest. Like you're probably wind up getting sucked into running something like that. But usually, if there is a group or an interest of starting a neighbor association, it's official. It's an official city organization.
Okay.
And because of that, you can utilize it for, there's sometimes grant money that comes in. Like there's actually sometimes resources that come in where we get money for neighborhood cleanup, which means you sit there pretty much in a parking lot and folks come and throw big items and clean out their garage, and it's free. Like there's stuff like that neighbor associations that organize can do. Also, knowing who your city council person is very important. Some are more active than others, but and usually that's going to wichita.gov, kind of putting in your
information.
Yeah, your information, figuring out on a map where you are.
Okay.
And you can show up to what's called a DAB boarding, District Advisory Board, and a lot of this information, the council member will be there, and then they have kind of appointees that help make decisions on stuff that's good for the district. So, but like what I think you guys are saying, a lot of people don't know about all that, right?
Right.
Normal people have normal lives, and they might not be plugged into all this other stuff. So part of my job is to get that information out.
Good.
The three things that we're looking for help with after, because we've been talking probably for 3 weeks, are higher standards for the police officers, a better way to report it, and more positive, fun, like games, interactions, events. I know it's hard with what's going on right now. I'm not going to talk about that subject because it's a different subject. But being involved to where, we're more friends with the police officers, and we're more on one team, and we're more on one unit, and higher standards and a better way of reporting it to where, they get held accountable.
Yeah, the goal is to prevent crime, and that comes from
you guys have as far as solutions. Because we're here to help. So what do you have for
Because I
solutions?
think right now, man, with tension being so high, and I don't want to act like it's just the last few years.
Right,
It's been high. Like tension between black people and the cops has been high.
It's an all-time high right now.
Yeah, but it's been there. I think right now it's just being filmed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now we're talking about it, but it's been high. It's been there. But like the community events, in theory, that sounds good, but I'm not good with cops. I'm not going to a community event with the police right now.
Right.
And there's a lot of people out there that feel just like me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of people out there that feel like me. So until we actually see these changes that we want, until we see the changes that we want, I don't think the community events are gonna
like here's a new procedure.
We need we need to see the procedures. We need to see convictions. We need to see.
Here's a new procedure. One strike, you're out. Like this is what we're gonna do. Here's a new procedure. As soon as they get caught doing this one time, they're off the police force. It's all over the newspaper. This is our new procedure. We now have no tolerance. Maybe you could help us create that, because that would solve most of the issues. If we're like, hey, here's one procedure. If they get found guilty of racial profiling, they no longer have a job. That way, those two people who got killed are still alive today, because if they would have had that procedure in place, they wouldn't have jobs. So if we could get your help to create a procedure to not allow them to have that ability to be a police officer after they have already done something like that, that will clean it up. Because like I said earlier, if they do that one time, you're going to have a very high percentage of the things that are going on. So they need to be held more of like a military mindset, to where the military, like you said, if you go spit on your police officer, you're out. Like there maybe, and then it needs to be known too. You can't just do it. You have to make it public, to where it's going to be like, hey, we've launched a new system to where one time you're out. That's going to make everybody feel a lot better and a lot more protected, to know that they're not getting away with it. I think that's the best solution. The one strike you're out program.
We need
one strike you're out.
Make sure that consequences are
Right.
They shouldn't have the badge. Because explain what your thoughts of having the badge were, because you explained it best earlier when you were talking about what it's like to wear a badge.
As in
like what type of respect you should hold and everything like that, when we were talking earlier.
I think you were telling us about, you were looking up to.
Oh yeah, I look, you know, when it's a police officer,
what you should be held to.
Yeah, what you should be held to is just, period, a higher standard. And so, because with that, as a community, whenever I saw a police officer, whenever I saw a fire department, I had that utmost respect for them, because of what I knew that they had done, and because of who it is that they were as a person and how they betrayed themselves. Like, they represented their badge well, you know. So I respected it. Like, okay, no, we need to respect them, because they stand for justice.
Right. They need to
they stand for what the badge
highest standard, because they're in charge of protecting us.
Right.
And if they aren't held to a whole lot of standards, we're not going to trust that we're going to.
I think,
you guys are going to be
Brandon, I truly feel like at this point where we're at, Mike is 100% correct. We do need to implement that. And furthermore, because, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure you've heard people say this. If you get like some kind of ticket or something like that, or once you get in the system, it's so hard to get out.
Right.
And the reason I bring that up is because they need to have that experience too. I mean, once you get caught in the system on that aspect, it's so hard to get out.
I mean, to be a whole department.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this, just to kind of
Go ahead.
tie into what you're saying. Our public records are available everywhere. Okay, any cop can hop on a radio. You can hop on a website and pull anybody's arrest record. Is it unrealistic as a citizen of Wichita or any city to expect that information be public? You know, that we are reprimanding these cops, that these cops now have marks against them. You know, just in case I want to sit down and see who's policing my neighborhood. I find out about these guys before they know about me.
A cop's record.
So, and there's a policy discussion I think will have to happen at the state level. And Florida does this, I believe. By the way, I'm not a lawyer, like, at all. So I think this law is over here. I just kind of pretend to be a lawyer at work. But it's called sunshine laws, where And I think the real comparison is to like a teacher, right? Like if you're a public school teacher, you get a file. And if you have a bad file, if you go apply for a job at another school, they're looking for your file, right? Yes. And then that's, and what we're finding is some not school districts, some states are much better at ensuring that this file goes with public officers and other public employees. And I think that actually is an important discussion going on right now, because we don't want these situations where someone is abusive of power and then can go get a job
anywhere
at the next.
Will you do me a favor?
Next place. Yeah.
Will you name off the stats, because you had it memorized of the stats of those 2 police officers?
So, and I believe it was either 17 or 18 for the officer who actually murdered George Floyd. I think it was 17 or 18 violations were reported against them. And the other one, I think you probably saw the same news things.
Yeah.
The other person just kind of stood there. He had double digits too. I don't know if it was like 11. It wasn't as many, but it was one of those.
I think it was 12 or
so
13.
the standard
right.
procedure would,
that wouldn't fly in Wichita, by the way.
So
like the chief made that
the solution that we have, the solution that we have of not letting those people have a badge would solve that.
Oh, yeah.
And events are good. Like we want to do events, but that needs to come first, because people aren't going to want to go to these events until they see change.
So and that's another thing that I'm interested in with this discussion, because the reality is
to be the highest standard.
Well, the reality too is we're not starting fresh.
No.
Like your experience from 6 years ago, like it doesn't matter if 4 years ago we got a new police officer and I say, oh, we're starting fresh now. No, because in your experience, these are emotional reactions when you see someone based off your past experience. So I'm just not going to go mess around at a park if a cop's there is pretty much what you're saying. Yeah. And it's because it's a real traumatizing experience. So, and there's no policy answer to this, I don't think, but I want to recognize it, and we got to, I guess, address it, even though I think
there is a policy.
Well, let me get to this though real quick. There has to be healing too. Like there has to be and that's not my world, don't get me wrong, right. But I think it's close to recognize where the past, it's not all just policy on paper, right? Like it's also experience that you've had, that you've had, well, everyone here has, but that's still sticking with you. Yeah. And so how do we get to, because the relationships are important. I think Mike is pointing that out as well. But also that healing that helps create future relationships. And as mayor, I don't know how to do that, but I do think that that's something that's coming up. That's real. That's a real thing we should.
The policy
consider.
answer, I think, is plain and simple. If you have 10 marks, you don't have a badge.
I think
people need to look at that. We're not looking into that, and we're not changing that, and we're letting them still be out there. So that, I think, if we implemented that change, it would change our community drastically. But you would have to promote it, and you would have to let everybody know that, hey, this is our new policy. Like, we're looking into all of our current staff. Anybody that has 10 marks isn't going to have this badge, because like we've all said, if you go spit in your officer's face, you're gone from the military. What you said earlier, if you go do something wrong at your job, you're fired. So maybe we do need to do more looking into the past, and maybe we do need to implement it moving forward, but you're going to have to let the public know, and it's going to basically have to be like a movement and a game plan that is going to be blasted, that everybody's going to know that you're not going to have cops that have 10 marks anymore. And moving forward, when they get their marks, they immediately lose their badge. And maybe there needs to be a whole program for racial injustice just as itself, when people are getting classified, to where that's a unit all on its own, and they only focus on that. Because if you have them doing 4 jobs, they're not going to have that attention just based on that. So that's my 2 cents.
I agree with that.
If we think about
that's the policy. Don't let them have a badge if they have 10 marks.
If I had 19 felonies, my life would never be the same.
Guys, by the way, I want to make it very clear that if you had that record that cop had, you would not be working in Wichita.
Man,
like that, just so you know.
okay,
Just-
yeah, no,
by the way, let me put that out there. That
Okay, I was
like
gonna
we don't
ask
have
you
cops like that.
okay,
who
all right,
knows
yeah.
that.
That feels good to know.
Minnesota guy, and I remember talking to Chief, like, because and we're one. No, it wasn't the Chief. I came in after following this. I forget what. I was up a lot that week, right? So I forget what day it was, but I texted Chief and I said, I want you 2 best policy experts in my office at 7 a.m. and I want you to go through policing policy with me. These are my tutor sessions, right?
Okay.
And I had 2 people down there, and I just flat out asked them, what was that? I didn't watch the video, I couldn't watch it, but I saw the technique that was going on there. And I do jiu-jitsu. I know it's like to have a knee on your throat. Like, I know what, it's a cheap move, by the way. But I know, like, okay, like what's going on? Like, so I asked, what was that? Was that was that held too long? Was that common police training technique? And they both, no, Mayor, it was not. Like, we do not do that. That was not common policing technique. And that's why I think our chief did a good job coming out and say that was a murder. One of the first police chiefs in the country come out and say that. And so I tell you that because really I don't know what was going on in Minnesota, but I do know that 10 marks, that type of stuff, I don't think that's common. I think that was just a real.
But nobody even really knows what the policies are, and maybe if you made it public, everybody would like that, and they're like, these are our policies for what our standards are in order to have a badge, because nobody even knows what it is.
So, yeah, it is public, but it's just not.
The body cams are great.
You gotta know what you're looking for, right?
The body cams are
You got to
great.
dig
The
for it.
body-
You got to dig for it at this point.
But they need to study these body cams, and they need to see if somebody had a report on them, they need to be investigated on the body cams. The body cams are great, but we got to use them.
So, and did I cut you off? I know you were talking about something, I jumped in, but.
No, I was just saying, my point was, if we can have some, and I understand you can't always judge it the same because police, you know what I mean? So they have to do different things. But at the same time, if I had all these counts against me and everything, I mean, I'd be probably dead. I'd be under the prison, you know what I mean? It would be unreal. And so that it was just kind of piggybacking off what Mike was saying and what Andre was saying as far as how can we view that stuff?
Well, it kind of touches on a little bit of, a couple of the stories that we've heard, that system getting caught into this, like where, you get a ticket, you can't afford the ticket, you lose your license, now you have to still drive to work because your kids aren't going to eat, now you're driving around a license. You
get a system for the police too.
Right, yeah. And then, but also but in the justice system, where, making sure that particularly with young folks, and I'll just say, because I mentioned that there's a correlation between like petty crime and bored young people, right? Like, we don't want to ruin someone's life who made a bad choice, and do we have enough, the programs needed to get someone who made a dumb choice,
and there's always forgiveness too. There's always forgiveness. Like somebody gets a chance if it's to get trained and forgive if it's not that bad. It's not like one strike you're out. Is this
Forgiveness for who?
The way that we always look at something at King of Freight is this coachable, and is it should you terminate them for it? And I feel like another thing is IT. Like the way that we created King of Freight is we keep track of all of your guys' stats. If we had IT police officers, what if they had stats? What if they were in the system like we are when they make a mistake, and they're held to those standards to where they're kept track of better, to where once they do a certain amount of things, they lose their badge. We don't feel like it's being tracked very well.
Well, I think that, but also we got to be, and I want to talk about like, just taking from what you guys said, like other aspects of the system as well, like making sure that we aren't putting someone who does something silly that it's really
not a fireable
you're
offense.
labeling the person or you're slapping a crime on. They have a record now. You kind of have this psychological label, like, and it comes back and it haunts them. And
yeah, for sure.
And I'll tell you, we really got the eagle here, don't we? I'll tell you a personal story. I was arrested, I think in 8th grade. I had to do a whole summer of community service for like breaking and entry. They kept me out of the system because as a first offender, and it was a young techman over there, and it was a young. I was young.
Thanks for your vulnerability.
Right, yeah, right. And I'll tell you, because they were able to give me a diversion program, as it, I was probably 13, I was 12, I was stupid.
Right.
Because they're able to offer me this and let me go work in 25 hours of community service in the summer. I was out back painting churches. I was helping stack shelves at the library. My friends were out. They all ratted me out, by the way. My friends were out just off doing nothing. Would I be mayor today if that record was there, or if I didn't have a way where I can redeem myself to my community and then now I'm clean, right? Like that's somewhere in some small town in New Hampshire is where that folder is. And that's what sparked me when I first got to Wichita. I worked with at-risk youth over at South High School. And that's what it was. I wasn't trying to identify and work with kids like I was, where like, you have potential, you might not see it. And if we're going to kind of create opportunity, particularly for people who might not know their potential yet, young folks, right? Then we also have to be accepting and find pathways forward of when you make a mistake, is there a way that we can, as a community, and this kind of gets into policing, gets into courts a little bit, still ensure that we don't slow down your growth as a productive individual.
It's the same as business. Is it coachable, or is it a termination?
Right, and I gotta tell you, like, I don't tell that story a lot, and I guess now the world's gonna know. But but it's one of those where, but it's one of those where, these little things. Somebody before me created the policy that allowed that to happen, and my parents didn't know about it. Yeah. And my folks, my dad's a carpenter, my mom's a waitress and a bartender at night. They don't have lawyers in their phones. They didn't go to school with lawyers. Like. So there's a level of privilege for some folks who wind up in a situation you were in, right? Where 14 years old again, you're in there and there's authority figures around you. Yeah. When you were telling me that story, I'm asking myself, would my son have been treated that way? You know, and that's when we identify privilege. That's when it's like, wow, wait, like, so how do we ensure that
doesn't happen again?
Right, that we're not having disparity.
Because while he's telling the story, you're thinking that about your son, and then while you telling your story, I'm thinking, if you look like me or any of us four, how would you be mayor today?
Right. No, you're right.
With that being your case.
Right. And
I don't think so. No, I don't think so either.
And no, you're right. And just telling, because we're kind of reflecting on the stories now. Brandon Johnson I learned this from Brandon Johnson. He tells a story about how he has to be calm and cool and collective in most really high strung situations. Right. Like you did when you were interacting with this officer who was pushing you, trying to get you to I think show emotion. And how much privilege it is that I can get angry and raise my voice, right? Like, and I do that. Like, I'm kind of known for, I consider it like just being me, but also like,
kind of being passionate or something like that.
Right, like I kind of, sometimes I get myself in trouble on the bench where I'm arguing
So what more?
But not everyone can do that. And based on how I look, I can get a kind of a pass on that. And I got to recognize that as privilege. And how do I make sure that,
you're using that the right way.
Right, that I can still use to empower voices of other people who, stories need to be heard.
And
I'm gonna say something else. Oh, my fault. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go
But
ahead,
while we're
real
talking
quick.
about privilege, I mean, just the fact that you're here and Mike got you here. Mike using his platform, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
For this is another instance there, because I mean, we talked about this before, like.
And you
we
using
don't
your
get that.
platform and
We
being
don't-
here as well.
We wouldn't get that, exactly. We wouldn't get that. So the fact that you acknowledge your privilege, I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
I
you,
wish
thank
more
you.
people
That's where
did.
it
Thank you.
gets
You know what I'm
started.
saying?
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And that's that.
Thank you.
And it's still like you're still growing and learning with it, right? Like, I mean, and that's the thing where
You're learning. You're 6 months into mayor game.
right, and not just being mayor. Don't get me wrong. Like, being mayor is a totally different world, but also just being a neighbor, right? Is recognizing,
that's really good.
and I think that it gets down to building relationships with people, being willing to lean into being uncomfortable, right? Like having that where, you know, you talk about your kids growing up, and I got to think about with my kids, like, I need to teach them to be not like the one who talked to you, right?
Yes.
Like, make sure that we are all responsible, right? And so and how do we work together to make sure your kid never has to experience what you did, right? And moving forward. So I think that
So
it starts with conversations like
So
this.
yeah, we're running
To
out
end
a
on a
little bit of
positive-
time. So, but what I would like to do is ask you guys, what else do you guys have? Because I gave him my 3 solutions after combining all of your guys' thoughts of, you know, higher standards and, you know, everything like that. But what do you guys have in closing this up real quick?
I want
In closing.
what I thought was really important. We've been talking about this for a couple weeks. We haven't.
Yeah, we have.
So what stood out to me the most that Mike has really harped on the positivity and making sure that this is spoken in a positive light. And so, you know, if there was anything last that I would want to say about this moving forward is, you were at the protest on 21st Street at the police station. They just had it. Okay. And so there, I actually learned something about the lunch sit-in in the 60s.
Right, we started that.
yeah.
We started that here in Wichita. And it's ironic that Wichita, if you look on the country map, Wichita is ironically just off being right in the middle of the country.
Right.
You know, just barely off. And so when that happened here, that was a wave that spread out to the rest of the country. And so I think it's not a far-fetched idea to say that Wichita being here, smack dab in the middle of the country, that we can be the shockwave and make the difference and the change. Because as we know, our country around the world, they wait for us to make decisions. And if we make a big decision here by saying that we don't stand for this here, and that is a shock to the rest of the country, that's an opportunity for us to truly shock the world. And it's not a far-fetched idea, but that comes with you and us saying that we having this talk, but we believe in you. So moving forward after this talk, you know, I just want to say anybody that I come in contact with, you know, you're our leader. I believe in you, and I hope that, you know, these experiences and what we talk about is left a positive imprint, that you know that, you know, you're just now coming into this job, but you have the support of some people who are not just looking at you like you're on the cop side because you're a political figure or because you're white, that you don't have black people who support you being the leader in our community, because you got my support.
Thank you.
Just by you being out here. So,
Yep.
you know, if we're gonna make a change, then yes, we need to make it together. And it's so appreciated that you are here with us today. You know, and that we can move forward and had a chance to speak about this. But, you know, it's just great. Let's be the change together.
And I tell everyone, hold me accountable. Don't let me drift off into, you know, focusing on the wrong issues. So I work for you, and
Thank you.
make sure you hold me accountable. Shoot me a message if you give me a call. You know, if there's anything I can do, any place I need to be, I'll do that. Like, I don't. Mayor Brewer, who services us tomorrow, passed away. One of the things he told me when he was mayor, and I was trying to learn from him, was this is just another job. You know, he told me this is just another job, and I'm kind of like, well, kind of, you know, like you're in the mayor's office.
No.
And I think that that's the right attitude, is just to make sure that we focus, that I never lose sight of that. So keep me in my lane if I ever do. Hold me accountable.
Yeah.
And that's usually what I ask people to just. They
Well,
might call me and yell at me if I do anything
No,
bad.
so in the shortest answer possible, I'd like to give everybody a chance to, say if there's anything left that you have that we've left off the table, Andre, and then ask Chris, Troy.
No, I mean, the biggest thing
We
for
came up
me
with a lot of
is just making sure everybody has the knowledge, is informed of what's going on in their city. Not only what's going on, who's in their city.
Right.
That's really what it is to me. It's just making sure people see it in the right light and have enough to gain a valid opinion on it.
Right. And I think there's a lot more we could be doing by spreading out some of that information.
I agree.
Yeah, so-
absolutely.
I just mentioned today, so
Right.
What do you got?
We do a lot more than this.
I'm good, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for
Thank you.
Thanks for showing up. I
Troy, do you have
appreciate it.
anything else you'd like to
Thanks,
say? Closing?
In closing, I think one of the solutions, just if we can know how we can have a real voice. I feel like a lot of the riots and stuff get crazy because people feel like they can't. You only listen if we
They're trying to be heard.
burn
Right.
this down. So if that's the only way, so people can have a real voice, and to where we can truly have an impact. If there's a way that you would know we can make that, accessible, I think that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and that's the goal, is measurable outcomes, right?
Yes.
Where I told people yesterday on social media, I get tagged and stuff about your mayor's council is just going to be fluff. And, my response is, listen, don't listen to politicians. Don't listen to a word politicians say. Look at the results. Like, give me an opportunity to provide results. Give me an opportunity to provide something.
Actions speak louder than words.
Right. Give me, like, I know what you're saying. I doubt it too. But I think we can make a real policy. I think we can actually, if we do, and I told the committee today, like,
Show us change.
if I told the committee today, this is the most diverse committee Wichita's ever put together. And if we do this right and we actually pass policy, if we actually get stuff forward, this would be the first time that's ever happened.
Yes.
And it's risky. Leadership is risky.
Yes, it is.
And it's not easy. But if the reward, if we do it right, and we actually make some positive change, like
what Aaron said, if
reward.
it starts in Wichita, it could spread throughout the entire world. If you're one of the first, cities to make change, and us being smack dab in the middle.
That's right. Well, Mike, I want to thank you for having me here. And guys, I
want to thank you for
coming.
I want to thank the Wichita Eagle too. So thank you, and thank you, James King. We got to give a shout out to James King out there. He's the producer out there, doing all the equipment that we don't know how to.
Hold on, James. Hold on.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
20 mics.
We're out.
All right.
Thank you.